I'm Laura Benedict. I'm the Cultural History Collections Manager here at the Las Vegas Natural History Museum. I have an associate's degree in psychology, a bachelor's in sociology, one in anthropology. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership. I'm working on a second one in anthropology, and I'm accepted into the PhD program at UNLV. So I have a long history in retail and other service work. I work very well with the public. So if you've ever been at, for instance, Black Friday, that was me. I was behind the counter taking care of all of those customers. So I know how to deal with people, and especially when they're not in their best of moods, I can still handle that and make sure that everybody gets what they need. But I've been here at the museum for a year and a half. So anthropology is the study of humans and how humans interact with their environment, including other humans and animals. Archaeology is the study of humans in the past. So if all you study is archaeology, you can get those answers, but because I'm anthropologically trained, I get those answers through a stronger lens of the people themselves. So I study the animal bones. I identify what animals were at this site. Some of the things that a zooarchaeologist can answer is, when did domestication happen? For instance, for sheep and goats and pigs. One of my advisors does that. What I'm studying is here in the Southwest. One of my sites is in New Mexico, and one of my sites is just northeast of Las Vegas. And I'm studying what they ate and how that may have changed over time. So the site in Las Vegas here, just northeast of Las Vegas, I have two different sites that are about 1,000 years apart, and we think that maybe they were the same group of people, the descendants of the same group of people. And so if their diet changed while they were in this particular area, that tells me maybe the environment changed, maybe the people themselves changed, maybe it's not the same descendants, maybe they had a possible religious change. Maybe they had such a change in their leadership that their leader no longer wants to eat this type of food. Maybe it's this type of food. One of the things that I'm finding is the possibility of, in the earlier years, the turtles that they ate were bigger. So maybe they've eaten all of the turtles to where now they have to eat the smaller turtles. Very interesting questions. But I'm looking at these sites through the lens of the people. If I was see, we call it a zooarchaeologist. So I look at the animals through the lens of the archaeology, through the lens of the people who would have used those animals. If I was an archaeozoologist, I would be looking at the people maybe a little bit, but through the lens of the animals. It's looking at the same questions through opposite directions. And I look at the culture. I study how the culture may have changed through the lens of what animals they ate. So this is our annex, and the first floor is some of these taxidermy. They're just too big to go into the elevators to get upstairs, where it's more climate controlled and there's more control against dust. So some of these are the more dusty, harder to control. These over here are normally on display at the museum, and we brought them down to have a different display put in. So some of these are some dik-diks, and we might have some dukers or things of that nature down in here. The annex is directly across Las Vegas Boulevard from the museum. This is where we keep it's the back store. If you think of a department store and they've got dresses and shirts and ties out on the floor, and you say, hey, do you have this in another side? And they say, I'll go and look in the back. This is our back. So again, this is our backstop. These are things that have not gone on display, or they've been on display and we've taken them back down. Sometimes we rotate in and out depending on what we want, what story we want to tell over at the museum. And this one here is a pelican. It indicates it's the full mount. This, I think, is our only pelican back here. We may have more across the street. We also, next to it, we have a wolverine.
And I check the names just to make sure. If I call it a badger and it's a Wolverine, somebody's going to say that I'm wrong. So I would rather check and make sure before I do that.
What is part of my profession is that I'm highly organized, and one of the things that I do in any given space is I start to organize things. And this profession allows me to do that. As you saw upstairs, I organized all of the boxes and the things that are in those boxes. And that allows me to make sure that we know where those items are, but it allows me to let researchers access to those so they can further look at the items and tell us more about it, and then we can share that information with the public.
Well, this photographer went all over the world, and he got pictures of pretty much every species in pretty much every environment. And it's just an amazing collection to have the slides from his collection. We are very lucky to get this. We can research, for instance, if we go back to this is people. These right here that I happened to pull out randomly, these are people. So these are lives that somebody could go back and talk to these people and say, what do you remember about, or how they've changed over the years since this photographer was there, and just know how their life has been impacted, how their life has changed since then. This is just, as an anthropologist, this is gold.
For me, the most challenging part is time management, figuring out what needs to be done at any given time. As I've said before, I have several projects that I'm working on, and sometimes I get requests to look in our collection for a specific item or a specific class of items. So I need to decide how much time that I'm going to devote to that, because depending on how detailed I get, it can take a good couple of months to go through our entire collection. As you saw from upstairs, that was just a tiny bit of our collection, to find the item that they're looking for or the class that they're looking for.
Go for it. So this is a maxilla. That's the top part of somebody's jaw. This is the mandible, and this is the maxilla. So it's the teeth and the roof of the mouth of some creature. Do you happen to know which creature this is yet?
Yeah, it's a horse.
It's a horse. So this is the prehistoric horse, yes, not the one that we have. This is a completely different species of what we have today.
It was Scotty, which is the larger of the two places horses.
You want to introduce yourself for the camera?
Oh, dear. Hi, my name is Susie Hertfelder. I'm a PhD student at UNLV, working on the preservation of the fossils in Tulia Springs Fossil Beds National Monument and the Ice Age Fossil State Park.
So what I do, the foundation of what I do is data management. I need to know what we have in our museum and where it is at all times. So one of the things that I'm working on is making sure that our collection is organized properly. On our paleontology side, which is the Natural History Museum collector takes care of that, but in the paleontology, we organize things by what species things are. On the archaeology side, we organize it by site, but also by where it is in the site. So we have a box behind you. And I pulled this out to show you what I mean by organizing it by material class. So I have labeled this box to show that there are several sites within this box. It specifies that it belongs to the BLM. It does not belong to the museum, but we can still conduct research on the items to know what they are. So if I open this up, I've organized it, and I've shown that this particular bag belongs to Gypsum Mine Apex Road site, and this is the trinomial. The 26 is our state, the CK is Clark County, and the 1206 is the site number. This also indicates that what is in this bag is organic material. And you can see that the next bag in line is ceramics from the same site. That makes it very easy for somebody who's researching ceramics can grab the ceramics and leave the organic material behind. He is one of our longest term best volunteers, and so she's going to be in today, so I'm setting up to make sure she's ready for some of the things that one of the projects she's working on is scanning. And probably everybody knows that sitting there scanning is not a very fun position to do, but it's needed, and we're very grateful that Judy comes in each week and takes care of that for us. So in March, I was invited along on an excavation, not an excavation, we retrieved some artifacts from two very sensitive sites in Clark County near Las Vegas. And this pot was one of the artifacts that we retrieved. And this is exceptional because number one, it's whole. There is some damage to it, but it's a whole pot, which never happens in an archaeological context. Not to mention this fibrous netting that also, we never get to see that in an archaeological setting. So we have this, and we dated it, and it was made at around 1100 AD, which is just amazing. It was made by ancestral Puebloans. And these bumps here, these are called corrugation. And this is awesome because the corrugation is around the entire pot, where normally you find it just as a band up here. Not to mention the size of this pot. This is one of the largest pots that I've ever actually seen, especially from an archaeological collection. The corrugation makes it easier to pick up and handle, which it would not have after it was fired. To make a pot, they mold clay, and then they put it in a fire. And this one would have been like a pit fire, like a bonfire, and that's where the firing process. Today's ceramics are put into a kiln, so that would control the temperature better. But this is basically put into a bonfire. So that's what keeps it from remolding. When it's wet, it's plastic, but after it's fired, it's more like ceramic. It's more like glass. It's less like clay. So after it is fired, they wouldn't have moved it very much because of its size. If when it was filled with something, it would be very heavy. However, they would need to move it a little bit, so they want to have a better grip when they do so. And that's where the corrugation comes in. And also the netting. We have a few hypotheses about why they put the netting in there. And one of those is that maybe it was easier to carry. Maybe it added a little extra grip. We think because of the size of the pot, we think that it may have been used to store grains, possibly. But it's an amazing piece that we're very lucky to have received for curation. Again, this belongs to the BLM. This does not belong to the museum itself.